Easter Day is here. How many of you find a lightness, a quiet joy that comes with the dawning of this day? Perhaps it surprises you. I think it's a fairly good guess that such thing is particular to Christians, given the Easter story is a Christian one, telling of death overcome, of God made in human form in Jesus, vanquishing death as oblivion and gifting this to those who believe in him. A story first arising from the experience of those who were witnesses to the events of Jesus' death. A story that developed as those first witnesses tried to make sense of what had happened. A story that has become Christian tradition, evolving over time as each generation in their time and place tries to make sense of how this still speaks. Maybe for many in our day, whether it still speaks. What it has to say of how we are to live within the world and the context we find ourselves. It's a religious tradition promising that with God, life will be better. The burdens of life will be eased. There's that intimation of a heavenly afterlife reward, of a God who will dip down and save us when things are too much to bear. Perhaps some of us go, I don't think I'm quite aligned that way. But even so, I wonder if it is an undercurrent in us, something implicit in the way we enact our lives. Through Jesus, our religious tradition proclaims, God has released us from the burden of our brokenness, saved us. And so it matters how we live. We are to labour hard and we are to labour faithfully to be worthy of this gift. We are to do our best to be good, to escape the vestiges of sin that might cling to us. So even though we say we have been rescued and saved, we shouldn't rest on our laurels. And religion is a way to keep you on the straight and narrow. As we look around our world, it is hard not to see life as difficult and full of suffering, and to look to religion to help us make sense of this. It is as if we know that the world is not meant to be the way it is. Perhaps suffering happens because we are not aligned with God, and we visit this on creation. But in Jesus we are shown we can live and we can participate in transforming the world. With God, we're given hope things can be better, that we can live otherwise, that there is another way. By turning to God, by paying attention to what God requires of us, we can learn to live in a way that will better the lot of the world. Religion thus provides solace and rescue. It is a way to understand life. It is a framework to guide, gives us direction and purpose to negotiate the real challenges of real life. Lending us hope and inspiration, it strengthens and enables us. We learn we can lend our shoulder to the divine task of trying to improve things, bring relief where there's injustice and violence and suffering in the world, where God seems absent. The world as it is, we declare, is not as it should be. it is not as God intended. It needs fixing for it to look as if God prevails. Do we expect ultimately this is up to God? So we're looking from the world to God, for respite and for deliverance? Well, this Easter season, I want to invite you to look at things another way. To propose that rather than calling us to turn our eyes heavenward to contemplate the marvelous rescue and glory of God, which is fine, by the way, could this religion of ours be calling us to turn toward our world, to look more deeply into it, to have eyes to see, expectant hearts full of hope that we will meet and know God here in this world? For this world, our dwelling place, is a dwelling place of God. Let us consider the great triduum of Easter, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Easter Day. With trepidation, we can manage the soft tread through the foot washing and the Last Supper ritual and the stripping of the church of Maundy Thursday. We can bear the solemn, aching absence of Good Friday because we know Easter Day is coming. And as Easter Day dawns with relief and great joy, we enter the glorious celebration of the new day. But what if the invitation of this triduum is not only or mostly about the glory of Easter Day? What if the invitation is pointing us to see that God's presence is revealed within all of life, within putting God to death, within the silent temple curtain rending, sky darkening, earthquake shattering hours of Jesus' death, within the agony of absence, the bleak emptiness of Holy Saturday, without in those times necessarily the promise of relief. Because in those Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday times in our life that we all know and have experienced, when God's absence is real and desolation is real, those times are part of life. Yet we try to avoid them. If we have them, we don't want to talk about it and we want to repress them. Perhaps out of fear that somehow, through some failure or inadequacy, God has abandoned us. God's absence is real in such times. As far as we know, as far as we experience, because we cannot imagine God with us in such darkness. But let us listen to today's gospel. Mary, heartbroken, bereft, in the dim light of new morning garden, cannot see Jesus, though he stands before her. She is looking for the Jesus she knows. Mary cannot see the Jesus before her until she is called by name, called back to herself, pulled from her narrative of loss and grief upon the death of her beloved Jesus, upon the death of all the hopes and the expectations she had of him, called by name. Mary is called to be present to the moment in which she is, to whom she is, to herself, who she is before any narrative. And then, being named and known and recentered, Mary has eyes to see, to recognize Jesus as he is. As she does with tears of joy, Mary reaches for him But Jesus tells her not to grasp, not to hold on to him, not to create another storyline about this recognizing. For by so doing, she will bind Jesus to ways of being known, to expectations that will resist change, and with time take fixed form. And in so doing, miss the rich, fluid abundance of a living relationship, one that flourishes when unfettered from the grasp of control. We, like Mary, tend to make our way through our world looking for what we expect to see in our accustomed ways that align with what we know. The way is the world is the way it is, we say. This way might just happen to match the narratives that bombard us and convince us and over time become part of us. But imagine, when those all tied up and tangled days happen more and more frequently at the moment, that you feel a tug. You feel this yearning in you just to be able to settle for a moment, to return to yourself, to no longer be pulled from one crisis to another. What if you were to imagine this as God reminding you, calling you by name, as was Mary, calling you to come back to yourself, and in that time for you to pause just for a moment and be still and listen. Listen for the breath and rhythm of the natural world. Allow your own breathing to slow and match. Allow the convincing rhetoric besieging you to ease and fade. Become aware of yourself, that which is before any narrative. And let this unfurl, so you have ears to hear and eyes to see the world as it is. Suffused with God, inviting you into a rich, fluid abundance of a living relationship. A world that is flourishing despite the fetters of our desire to grasp and control. So this Easter, let us loosen our habits of certainty and are holding tight to the way we think things should be, to the God we think we need. Instead, let us learn to receive God with us, wherever we might find ourselves in our life at this time. For this world, with all that that includes, is our dwelling place and the place of our knowing God.